I'm Sami, and this is the Career Kickstart Show. Today I have one of just such a good friend who, okay, Rosanna, if you are a digital nomad, you have heard of Rosanna. She is the godmother of Lisbon, the digital nomads, that is. And I'm not saying that she rules Lisbon with an iron fist, but she's definitely someone not to get on her bad side.
What do you sleep with the fishes?
The sardines, literally, she'll put a sardine head in your bed so quickly. I'm just joking. She's a very lovely person, good friend, and I wanted to bring her on the show because Rosanna has a gift that I admire so much because I do not possess it. Rosanna she's very gregarious, she's a people person, and she's organized. She's like the person who would be the good admiral or something, getting all the boats in order. As you can tell, I have no idea what the Navy does. But the person that gets the boats in order, she would be great at that, and that's what she does. She is the leader and the founder of the world's largest digital nomad group, the Digital Nomads of Lisbon. And I think she does marketing or something like that, but mostly she's just a real rad human being who knows how to grow a community, keep it sustainable, inclusive, and altruistic. So Rosanna, I know that I barely scratched the surface, and you can tell I have only vague ideas of what you do for your job. I know you're really good at it, but that's not what we're really talking about today. We're talking about the fact that you're awesome at building networks.
Likewise,
so,
Sami.
I do what I can, but you're quite masterful. So, Rosanna, give us just a soundbite of a little bit about you, and then tell us about your Nomad group.
Yeah, thank you for that lovely introduction. I have to say, though, we're not the biggest group in the world. That's probably Chiang Mai. And
No,
we're
Vegas
a
in the
whole
group.
team.
I'm
We're a
starting
whole
the
team
fake
of 10
news.
people who run this nomad group in Lisbon. So I want to definitely share all those flattering words with the team. But about me, I was born in the Netherlands. I'm half Portuguese. I have been doing online marketing for the past 10 years, freelancing for 5, and also nomadic since 5 years. So I've been traveling for the past 5 years. Not right now because of the Rona, but
yeah, digital homebodies.
exactly, yeah. Work continues as usual. Luckily, most of my clients are in areas that so far are not affected, maybe in the long run, but right now it's doing pretty well. And yeah, I'm looking forward to speaking with you today on how I get my clients.
Yeah, how you get your clients, and it all really ties into your group. So how about, because just spoiler for the listeners, Rosanna is one of those lucky freelancers that pretty much can just get by on word of mouth because she's that good. People know and trust her because they've met her. So she's not the rest of us who are trawling the internet doing a live stream trying to get a new client. She's been lucky in some ways, but also designing how she can get these clients. So tell us a little bit about how you get clients, and just do the run through of your process.
Yeah. Okay. So to tell you, first of all, when I started freelancing 5 years ago, I could barely use my network that I had before. So my network before was mainly in London because I was living in London at the time. And it was a lot of headhunters. And to this day, a lot of those headhunters get in touch with me 5 years after, because on my LinkedIn, it still says I'm in London just because I can't say nowhere on LinkedIn. But the funny thing is, a lot of them are still not open to remote work. So now I was in a position where I had to start from scratch. And in London, I had a 3-month notice period. So I was already telling everyone that I was starting to freelance, mainly because I didn't really know how to get clients. And I had seen on these little websites like People Per Hour. And at the time, it wasn't called Upwork. It was called something else. But I had been able to get a few small projects from there, which gave me the confidence to say, okay, I know what service to offer, what package service to offer, and what to charge for that. So I think I'm going to just try to find all my clients through those kind of channels. spoiler, that was never necessary. I told a bunch of my friends, and someone of my group of friends had told an old boss that I was going to start freelancing, and they had just started a new business. So for the first 2 years, I did not look for any client. I got this client via a friend notifying my old boss. And basically, even though I was freelancing, I was just invoicing them. That was my only client. And then 2 years in, this client was suddenly having financial problems and it wasn't paying me and whatnot. And suddenly I found myself in a situation with absolutely no leads coming in. And I had never really I never really say to people what I do. So I didn't really have anything to work with here. Funny thing, when it rains, it pours sometimes, Sami. So at that same time, I had broken up with my boyfriend, and I had also had just committed to a pretty expensive flat in Lisbon for a couple of months. So basically, I didn't have an income. I suddenly had a lot more time on my hands, and I was kind of stuck in a place because I had already paid and committed to this thing. So what I started doing, really to just keep myself busy and to also meet new people and make friends, is I had started a couple of years before to create some meetups in Lisbon for the digital nomad community. Because what's so typical about digital nomads is we're loners. We don't really have friends in these new cities, in these new islands or towns that we land. So even though I'm half Portuguese and I do know some people in Lisbon, when I went to Lisbon 5 years ago, I never really, I would meet up with some friends that I knew who had, let's say, normal lives with normal jobs a couple times a week, but they don't really want to hang out with me every day. I didn't have anyone. So I was quite lonely. And that was really the reason that I started organizing nomad meetups. That's
Yeah,
about
and 5 years ago, and the thing is, people got to understand that it was 5 years ago, and now there's like thousands of you guys, and you're even able to keep up virtual meetups. And I know that for me, like blowing through Lisbon and just connecting with that group, it meant that I ended up like meeting other Lisboners, I forget the Lisboners, all over the place. I'd be in like Brazil or Bulgaria, and some be like, oh yeah, Rosanna. So it's
Yeah, it's a
something
big
that
community.
it's a big community. So tell us a little bit about, now we know the why behind
Yeah.
your reason to start it. How did you begin this endeavor?
Yeah, I began basically, so the 5 years ago, it was because I was lonely. There was a hostel in the place that I was renting next door. And I was talking to the owner. I was like, hey, if I organize something, could you host me? He's like, yeah, how many people are coming? I'm like, I have no idea. 5 people, 20 people, I have no idea. And he's like, yeah, cool, whatever, just set it up. Actually, very first Nomad meetup that I ever set up, almost 50 people came from also other cities in Portugal. So people came down for it, actually. It was really interesting. We had 3 speakers. One of them was virtual. So I didn't really know how to put these meetups up. But what I did to get all these people there is I found, so have you ever heard of a Nomad List, Sami?
Yes, I've heard of Nomad List. Isn't that the one that has the map and it tells you if the Wi-Fi is good or the pollution's bad?
Pretty much, yeah. So that's like an informative website for digital nomads on what the cost of living is and how suitable it is for a digital nomad to be in this particular place. But also, there was a networking side to it where there was a Slack at the time. And this is at a time when Facebook groups weren't that big 5 years ago, or at least not for digital nomads. And now there is a digital nomad group for pretty much almost every city in the world, or at least country. But at the time, that wasn't the case. So if you wanted to get information or meet people, Nomad List Slack was at the time one of the best sources for that. So I promoted it in combination. I got in touch with Peter Levels, and essentially he had all these followers on social networks, right, like Facebook. So he set up a Facebook event that was called Nomad List Meetup for Digital Nomads, and then I was basically the host and taking care of everything else.
Okay, so just to interrupt, for those who are
Uh-huh.
listening who are like, how can I translate to my profession? What Rosanna essentially did was that she found She's in a subgroup. If you're not a digital nomad, maybe you're an accountant, what you can do is find a umbrella organization or
Right.
something like that where you can reach out,
Yeah,
or a subgroup or a website or something like that, and promote this to the people in
totally.
your industry or whatever the interest group is. So sorry for that
Absolutely.
interruption, but I just wanted to like, because
Yeah.
you are so good at just like piecing together like these sort of connections. You have a very intuitive sense of being like, okay, if I need to do this, then I should, you know who to reach out to. That's, I think, is your secret sauce, is that
Hmm.
you instinctively know, okay, if I'm going to do this thing, I should talk to a person who does this or knows this. And not
Right.
everybody has that instinct. I don't always have that myself. So I wanted to clarify that. So,
Yeah. You know, what I would say to people who are trying to translate this to their own situation is, where do you get your information from right now, from your industry? Where do you know, like, what events are going on in your city from your sector? It doesn't matter if you're in startups or startups is a bit more generic, or business in general, but it could also be UX designers, or there's so many professions that I can imagine are informing y'alls, or also or also trying to get people together at meetups. So those are if those are the kind of people you want to reach out to. That first meetup went really well. I was really nervous about it, especially because I didn't know how many people would show up, and I didn't want to embarrass the venue or myself, or so I was very nervous about it. But you know what my takeaway is, Sami, from that first meetup? How bad can it be, really? Just if you can convince one friend to come with you, worst case scenario, you're having a drink with a friend. You know,
there you
it
go.
doesn't really matter. So
And you can bring people in the bar or the cafe. You can kind of bring them
totally.
over.
Yeah, no. And another way that I got a lot of people to join, this you're gonna find this funny, but I also printed out a couple of posters with a QR code, Sami. I don't know if you've ever
Ooh,
used a QR code.
so high tech.
I know, yeah, it's so advanced, so incredibly advanced. But I put some of those posters up in there were only literally 2 or 3 cafes at the time where nomads were working from in Lisbon. Now there's, oh goodness, like 50 or
Oh, you
60.
can't throw a rock without hitting some starry-eyed dreamer with a laptop.
Totally. Yeah, and so I just put that on in those cafes because I could see that a lot of people were on their laptops there. And another way that I did it is essentially, okay, this is going to sound really strange, Sami, but just people on Instagram with the hashtag digital nomad and Lisbon, I would just reach out to them and say, hey, I'm organizing this event. If you're still in town, why don't you stop by? And I think that is what did the trick, really. So the combination of the 3 things, essentially.
Yeah. No, and that's
Yeah,
good. You tried some different ways to reach some folks and you took a chance. And I feel like even for folks who might be like, oh, 50 people, that's intimidating. You can also make it like a smaller list, like maybe reach
totally.
out to like maybe 10 people. Or this is something where if you want to like keep it a little low pressure, one thing that one of my clients did was that she created a meetup group that was like UX design art walks. And it was just
Yeah.
like a small casual group where people walked around looking at street art and they just
Oh,
happened to be
yeah,
UX
totally.
designers. So
Yeah,
you can create an event that is to your speed. It doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be something where, for you, one thing that I noticed is that you like having people around you, like this sort of engagement, and it seems like you leaned into something that you already enjoyed. So
right.
even if it wasn't like some like whiz bang boom, you'd still have a good time doing it,
Totally.
whatever the result was.
Yeah, exactly. And that is important, that I honestly stepped into this with the goal to just have a good time and meet some fun people. And what I didn't know, Sami, is that it was obviously that first one's very unprofessional, or there wasn't a Facebook group, or there wasn't a meetup group. That was me trying something new. And then when I saw that worked, I just kept doing them, not just in Lisbon. I put Nomad meetups on, you wouldn't believe where, honestly. Go in India, or like all these different places.
I
So
would
typically,
believe Goa. I wouldn't
yeah,
believe if you were like, yeah, then Goa and then Cleveland and then we hit.
Cleveland. That's on my list. But so I kind of just continued doing these things, but only when I saw that no one else was doing it. So if someone else was doing it, because my goal was just to have fun and meet people, even better if someone else organizes it, then I don't have the work of doing it. So I didn't do this for the sake of organizing anything or for the sake of selling myself or getting clients. That was not my intention. And I'll tell you one thing, Sami, I gladly help any other nomad in my case, or obviously anyone else who comes from this podcast with getting started. But what I often see in their process is if they step into this with the goal of closing clients, typically they stop doing it after a couple of months. Why? Because maybe they're not getting the results fast enough and they get demotivated, or they're like, oh, I didn't get anything from this. But what I didn't know, Sami, is that probably I only started noticing and reaping the fruit. Does that exist? Reaping fruit?
Yeah, sure. Reaping fruit, reaping souls, whatever we're reaping.
Exactly. I was reaping in new clients probably only 2 years after I started doing these first meetups. So 2 years after, when I lost that one client, right? This is when I started taking things much more seriously and doing meetups and other events much more regularly, because I was just trying to keep myself sane and busy. And also I started saying what I did, which I think is a mistake I made in the beginning. I don't think anyone really knew that I was running affiliate programs for other people and that I was doing paid search. And so, yeah, I think that was a little bit of a difference, that I guess people just saw my profile as well on meetup.com, because now I had after a while of doing it by myself, and in Lisbon having done a couple of meetups by myself, now there was this other person who wanted to also start organizing meetups, but on a bit more of a regular basis, like once a month. And this person is Ash, and to this day we work together on the meetups in Lisbon. And this is what I think is important. If you have a little bit of an organizing spirit, or maybe you want to push yourself and try something new and get into organizing events, if there's already someone who you think has similar values as you doing events, maybe partner up. Maybe you can work together. Also, because it's more motivating when you have someone else to bounce ideas off of or to work together with. And if one person can't make it, maybe you can make it, or the other way around. I think the way that you step into this, and in a selfless way, also to try to do it for the sake of bringing people together and letting them connect on a personal or professional level. If you step into it that way, I guarantee you're always going to get so much better results, and so many more people are going to turn to you whenever they need someone or they know someone who needs your skills.
I would agree with that. And the thing that I think is also really key, if other people followed up on this, is the point of collaboration, and not just the fact that you brought in other people, other co-organizers into the group. It's just the fact that you, and I've seen this in action, you collaborate with other group owners. You'll do joint events with a co-working space. If someone is pitching in, you pitch in with them. And I feel like that's helped you, because I've noticed with some cities that maybe have rival groups, because maybe a startup is doing a group or a salesperson's doing a group. They do fizzle out, because a lot of times they could have been collaborating together, then maybe clashing apart.
Because they have their own agendas and those don't match. So if the agenda is I want to sell more, or I want to grow my own brand, then actually you're going to not achieve that. And unknowingly and unwillingly, I somehow created a brand for myself as well during these meetups, but I didn't step into it with that intention. And I think that can make a big difference, because I just earned so much goodwill. It sounds weird to talk like this about myself, but it's really true. I really feel that so many people have my back and want what's best For me, because I've stepped into it saying, oh, you got a new co-working space. How about I reach out to my group and we set up a co-working day at your co-working space? This is a great way to promote you. And if you give that stage, if you have a stage and you share that stage with other people, inevitably it's going to come back to you in karma points.
Yeah, that's really what you're reaping. You're reaping karma. You're a karma farmer.
Yeah, karma farm. I'm reaping the karma.
Oh, what is it? Old farmer Rosanna on her
Yeah,
farm.
old McDonald.
And what I think is really cool about your group is that feeling kind of filters down from the top to the bottom. So people feel that camaraderie. And that makes it, I know for me that you actually helped me get speaking gigs in Lisbon. And the fun thing about Rosanna is that when she wants you to speak or do something, she's really good at keeping that on your radar. Like she's the one who convinced slash volunteered me to do open mic night in Lisbon. That is
And
the
it was
meetup.
great, and
It
people
was
loved
super
it.
fun. It was fun. I gotta give a shout out to the local Portuguese comedians because they were all sweet, and that was during the time when a lot of comedians were being outed as pervs, but none of the Portuguese guys. They were all
No,
really great, really
they
supportive of
didn't do
a
creepy stuff.
woman comedian, so really against all the stereotypes that you hear. So good job,
Yeah,
Lisbon. You have an
yeah, they're good.
inclusive comedy community.
Very nice. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
you're doing these really cool things. And for folks who are listening, we've gone through how you developed your why, how you developed your group. Talk a little bit going back to the networking. We chatted about this before the show started, but there's a lot of misconceptions that people have
yeah.
about
That's a good point.
networking.
Yeah,
Tell me a little bit about what you've noticed when people ask you for advice on this topic. What
right.
are some of the things that they mistakenly think about networking?
Yeah, so it's funny. I literally just came out of a mastermind earlier, and someone had made a bit of a career change and was struggling with getting new clients. And my first question is always, are you networking? What does your network look like? Are you, reaching, are you, are you moving amongst people who could potentially use your skills or know people who can use your skills? It's always my first question, because honestly, like, I think it's so much harder to imagine. I would now start my brand, Rosanna Lopes affiliate marketing programs. That is obviously an option. But if I have an immediate, I have bills to pay, I have an immediate problem to solve, which is I need money now. And I think that a network is just such a quick way of getting clients now. And luckily, I'm now in a position where all of my clients, I have not had to look for them online or on job boards and or anywhere else where you would normally maybe look for jobs. They all came through people that I met through events or in other ways that I networked. So what I hear from people when I say, do you do any networking? I Many people are uncomfortable with the idea of networking because what they imagine is like one of those really stiff events where you show up in professional attire and behave really well and fakely as well, and presenting yourself. Everyone's exchanging business cards. So I agree, that sounds horrible. And luckily, that is not what my networking life, if you could call it that way, looks like at all. So
Yeah.
I'm actually just having fun while I'm doing it. What about your experience, Sami?
People get worried about the stiffness. They also worry about being salesy because it's almost like we put the
Yeah.
idea of networking outside of how we do other social interactions. Like networking
Mm-hmm.
is just making friends in your industry. That's literally all it is. And for folks who are job seekers who are like, okay, this is all well and good for a freelancer,
Yeah.
the thing is that the hidden job market is real, and that's where you have less competition. Instead of going on
Mm-hmm.
Indeed where like you're dropping your resume in a pile of 400 other resumes, if you actually knew somebody at the company or someone could introduce, you're going to have less competition because you're going
Totally.
through the side door. And there's definitely folks who are just, they're job seekers. They want to be in a company. They
Mm-hmm.
If they get a layoff, or there's a merger or something like that, they can make some calls and they're already scheduling interviews
Yeah,
in the next week. So this is definitely something. And I think for right now, with the fact that we are going through a recession, that's just going to be the
mm-hmm.
fact of life for the next year at the very
Right.
least.
Mm-hmm.
Networking is more of a priority because a lot of companies are not going to want to spend as much money for job board ads or for
Totally.
recruiting fees. People don't realize that hiring costs a lot of money, and companies were willing to do that for the last couple of years, because we've had the, what do they call it? It's called a bull market for the last decade. And that
Mm-hmm.
means that job seekers had their choice in a lot of
Yeah,
ways. So
totally.
companies had to wine and dine them. Sorry, buddy, the honeymoon's over. So they're no longer taking you to Red
Unfortunately.
Lobster, baby. There's going to be like frozen pizza, and that's the date night. So networking is super important. Now,
Yeah.
for you, what are some tips for when somebody goes to a networking event and they're new? For me, I'm good in a smaller crowd. Like usually when I'm confronted with even like a nomad group meeting, like I immediately have that moment of being like, whoa, there's a lot of people.
Right.
What do I do?
Yeah.
So what are your tips for, just
Yeah.
a participant?
Yeah, because if you don't enjoy it, Sammy, you're not going to be able to continue doing it. What I would advise first is look for events that can be relevant to your sector, where you could potentially find people who could become your clients, or not even, just people who do the same as what you do, and maybe learn some new stuff along the way and give each other clients. What I would advise is go to websites like meetup.com or Eventbrite and see what's going on in your city. And if there is something that you think is relevant to what you do, let's just say you're a content writer, it could be specifically other content related meetups, but it could also be startups or business, or maybe you're focusing your content on a specific, your copy on a specific niche. I don't know, Bitcoin, or then go to meetups that are around that. If you enjoy working, you make websites and you enjoy working with a particular sector, then go to a meetup that is around that particular sector. So,
This is a very good point, Rosanna, because a lot of people, they did get discouraged if there's not a meetup for their specific job title, where
right.
oftentimes you want to go to a meetup filled with people who are more likely to hire that job title
Mm-hmm.
than necessarily a group full of, you're an accountant and you're going to a whole
Totally.
group full of accountants. You might want to go to the group that's for the local chamber of commerce, so you can meet
Mm-hmm.
local business
Exactly.
owners who need those bookkeeping services.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or there's not always, but there's startup meetups is like a more generic term. And you can see in cities where not a lot goes on that when once someone starts, it will be like around startups, and then they'll go more niche. So the options will be more niche after the first guys start doing business or startup meetups. But if I would say attend some of those, even if it's not precisely what you're looking for, attend some of those first to see the vibe, see what you like or dislike about it. Because also, maybe you like it, or maybe it works for you, and then you don't have to organize anything yourself. But also learn what kind, if you would decide to start organizing events yourself, then find a way to understand what kind of meetups you want them to be, or what kind of events you want them to be, what kind of vibe you're looking for. And stepping into these meetups with that kind of mindset, it can help you create your own ideas. And with I'm saying meetups, but honestly it doesn't really need to be that, Sammy. Within the Lisbon community, what we do is we organize meetups where there's not really, typically there's not really, you don't have to do anything. So we're just there and we're just having a drink together and we're just chatting, we're just talking. It's really casual. It's like a happy hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then we also have talks. We organize talks. So we get people to talk about certain topics, just like yourself, in your case about LinkedIn and finding jobs online. but we've had so many talks about all kinds of topics, right? You could start organizing workshops or talks and try to get those people to gather around there, and typically people hang around after the talk, or that could be a fun way. It depends on, you know, what your own niche is or what your own job is, but think about dinners, think about hikes. It doesn't have to be a happy hour. It could be so many different things. And the important thing is consistency.
Yeah.
If you start with anything, if you can be consistent with that, if you decide to do it once a month or twice a month or every week, I don't care what it is, as long as people can depend on you that this is happening on that consistent basis.
Yeah.
What did you want to say about that?
I think that's true. And the thing is, for folks who are just experimenting with this, they can also go to like maybe a bigger group. Like for UX
Mm-hmm.
designers, they can go to the UXPA and say, hey, to maybe start like a book club or something like that.
Totally.
And then it takes some of the pressure off you. And it's
Yeah,
also helpful for that group. And that's really good for a lot of job seekers and freelancers to work with some of these bigger organizations, because you're giving people a real concrete example of
totally.
your work ethic and your follow through. So that
Absolutely.
helps you become a little bit more known. And it also gives you an opportunity to potentially maybe get a reference or
Yeah,
like a portfolio review, or have a senior in your field take interest in you and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different,
completely.
I think, levels of effort that you can
Yeah,
make in this if you want
yeah.
to. You can choose your own difficulty
Totally. And
level.
yeah, and also I'm very aware that I'm an extrovert, but that some people just don't enjoy it. You were just mentioning earlier that you prefer smaller groups. I completely, you know, understand that. So find something that works for you. I know that people who really hate other people or social situations, this is a hard topic. The networking part is a hard topic. So in that case, maybe there is an online network that you'd feel more comfortable with. These exist as well. I'm in a couple of Slack groups actually. I think one is called Tech London. There's one that's called like Online Geniuses. There's so many, and you can look for them or create them online if this is something you're more comfortable with. But it's also networking. Wouldn't you
Yeah.
agree, Sami?
Yes, and that's the thing. It's about making sure, because the thing with networking, personal branding, they feel like they're like fancy buzzwords in a sense for essentially having a reputation and having people know
Yeah.
you. And that's something that I think people feel like, oh, this is some millennial thing. When if you think about it, your grandparents had a personal brand. Maybe it
Yeah.
was something that they created by being active in their community, like they were in the garden club or the church or something like that, but
Hmm.
they were able to be visible. And a lot of people, because we have these sort of busy, sometimes disconnected modern lives where we're
Yeah.
not congregating in the town square, I don't know,
Hmm.
listening to the newspaper boy read off the news or whatever they did in the 50s. We have to take some different efforts to be known, to be visible, and
Yeah.
especially for other people to know what you do, because it's really
Yeah.
hard if someone who even likes you to maybe keep their ear out for an opportunity for you if they
Totally.
don't know what you do,
Yeah, no, and this is a
or
mistake I really made at the beginning. So when I was just introducing myself and telling you that thing that happened 2 years into my freelancing career, where I suddenly found myself without a client, even though I had already been doing all these meetups, I didn't really know the power of my own networking. So what then happened, Sami, is since didn't do a good job at telling people what I did, and also, in a way, this is also something that some people are more comfortable with and some people are uncomfortable with. Some people are very easy going with saying, hey, I'm Rosanna, I'm in online marketing, I specialize in this. I would never, I did, that didn't come naturally to me. So what I
Mhm.
did when I found myself without a job 2 years into my freelancing career is I created a couple of business cases of basically what I achieved at some particular client that I worked with. So how I made X for this client in 80 hours. something like that. I wrote about it. And the funny thing is, when I posted this, not on my, I also posted it on LinkedIn, but now I had so many of my new nomad friends on Facebook that when I posted it there, I got so much more response from that. I know that you're a LinkedIn expert, and I wasn't very good at using my LinkedIn at this
It's
stage.
okay.
Because my LinkedIn was still full of these London people who don't want to hire remote workers. So I didn't do a good job at investing time in changing the people that I have on my LinkedIn and making my profile significantly different. So in my case, I just posted it on my Facebook, and suddenly I had someone saying, hey, you do affiliate marketing, right? We need an affiliate marketer. And I had met that person at the second meetup I've ever put on 2 years earlier. But she just happened to see that on my Facebook. I want to quickly tell you how I met all my clients so that you can see the diversity, and that honestly, they all come from my network in one capacity or another. So one of them is a WordPress plugin and theme. It's called Thrive Themes. And I met them at that second meetup I've ever put on 2 years earlier. Then I met someone at a co-working space in Thailand. So the reason I go to co-working spaces, Sami, is not because I like paying for a table and internet. It's because there are people there who are also working online, and some of them have businesses. And I just like meeting new people who are interested in the same things as me. So a co-working space in my particular case is an excellent place to meet other nomads or other freelancers or online workers. Yeah, second client I met at a co-working space, and I helped him for free one day because he was struggling. And 1 month in, he was from making pretty much close to zero, suddenly was making 8K from the little help that I'd given him in a couple of hours with some AdWords help.
Wow, you're a wizard.
Yeah, you know, this I guess I got lucky as well. Sometimes it doesn't work as well in just a couple hours of work, but that's the second person. Then another couple of people who, yeah, I think pretty much all the other ones are, I've got a CBD client, I've got like a motorcycle rental company. Those are also through people that I met at meetups that I put up. And one particular one was a dinner, the other one was a happy hour. Then there's one client that I just finished up a project with that I actually met at a conference in London a while back when I still had my, let's say, normal life. In one way or another, and I'm probably forgetting about one or two here, but in one way or another, they're all part of my network and from my networking efforts. And I'll tell you what, I now have been able to scale my business, and I've hired someone. I met her at a co-working space as well. And I have some virtual assistants. I know them through friends that I know from meetups. It's just all connected. And honestly, if it wasn't for networking, I would not be making my money the way I'm making it today. So there you go.
Yeah, and I completely understand how you have been able to do this by word of mouth. Like my first like really big remote client, Career Foundry, I was connected to them when they were just a groovy little startup, plucky, and trying to expand. And it's because I met a woman in a ladies Zumba class where we did brunch afterwards. So we do Zumba and then we do brunch. And then eventually because I'm not always the person who remembers to be like, oh, hey, I'm Sami blah, 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 and I do this. I try to work that in later on in the conversation.
Yeah.
But she found out I did career services. She connected me to them. It was such a softball interview because she had already talked me up to them because she knew me. So the interview was not nerve-wracking. It was just a cool conversation with the CEOs.
Exactly.
So it gives you not only that edge over the competition, it also warms the client or the company into already being cool with you. Because if you are referred by their employee, then they can already guess that you probably fit the culture fit, that you'll probably, at least personality wise, be kind of chill as well.
And worst case scenario, you've got a new friend, and that's not so bad, is it?
No, I think that's the benefit. And for me, like part of the reason why I like networking in tech and in my industry is that it's cool to have other people who are interested in the same things that I am. Like you with the
Totally.
digital nomading.
Like-minded people, even though we're so different, there's like this almost unifying, there's something that unites the people in a certain way of going about things and attitude, isn't it?
Yeah, and you get to talk to people where most people in your life are probably not going to be excited to necessarily talk about the nitty gritties of your profession in the same way you might. So
Hmm.
you talk to people, you get up to date on trends, you get to feel a little bit excited because you're talking to someone who has a passion for the same subjects that you do. And I think that's super important for people who want to stay jazzed about their career. A lot of folks lose some of the love for it in some ways because maybe they're bored with the same routine at their work or they're not really connected to the new technologies. But if
Hmm.
you're always like making a point, even if it's just once every quarter, to do like a
Yeah.
happy hour with some folks, that means that you can get up to date. And if God forbid something happens, you have other connections besides your coworkers in that
Yeah,
industry because it doesn't, if your network is only your company that you're in,
totally.
that means if there's a layoff, how the hell are any of them going to really help you in some ways? They're all looking for jobs too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah, and just on a personal level, it's just so enriching for your personal life. There's really nothing to lose here, and I really do want to be aware of some people who are a bit more shy or introverted. But what would you say is your advice for introverted people who still want to network?
And the thing to know about, because I'm an introvert, and the thing is that I didn't go to every meetup in Lisbon, but I went to enough that I was like, especially the ones that I was just already interested in. And
Hmm.
then I maintained connections with people online. So a lot of, and also a lot of the principles that you're describing here, it can also be done digitally. Like this is something where you've done it with the Lisbon group where you're having watch parties and
Yeah.
you're doing Zoom chats and there's Slack communities out there. For those of you who are more comfortable with online networking, like I do feel like being able to meet in person and stuff like that, that creates a synergy
Mhm.
that doesn't always happen in an online space.
Digitally, yeah.
But you can
Hmm.
replicate that sometimes, but it's still something
Totally.
where you can find a way that works for you. It doesn't matter if
Totally.
you're more of like an introspective
Yeah.
introvert who might prefer a project based
Hmm.
meetup like the one that my client did that was just a walking group. Like it's something where you don't have to like worry about mingling around a bar. It's like a
Yeah.
project, you're walking, you're looking at murals, you're checking the map, you're discussing a very specific thing. It's not something where you have to like pull a topic out of your butt. So you can
Totally.
go for groups like that where you can feel, because I know for a lot of introverts, it's easier to start the conversation when you're working on a project together. So maybe volunteering and like cleaning up the highway with a charity group or planting a garden or something like that. Those can
Completely.
all be ways for you to interact, but also have something to do if the conversation dies down. So you're not being like, have you guys seen Tiger King? You know, like trying to struggle for something to say and be like, oh yeah, Carol
Totally.
killed her husband, right? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. She did it, Carol Baskin. It's interesting. So I agree with what you say and find something that suits you. I'll tell you what, about the Lisbon Digital Nomad community, I have some stats here that I can share. So we do very different events, right? So we do comedy nights, but dinners and happy hours. But we have 250 people attend our events on average a month. 250 different people, and we have
Wow.
about 100 people show up to the happy hour every week. So that just shows that there are people showing, different people who don't show up to the big meetup, who show up to the dinners or the talks or the comedy night or to, so we do see some overlap in those people. You see some familiar faces at almost all the events, but it does attract some other different people, and I can only imagine that this just suits them better, that they just enjoy that more, don't you think?
Yeah, and that's the cool thing is that with your group is that If you want to, you have a thing to do every night in Lisbon. But if you don't want to, there's usually at least one thing on the calendar that you're like, yeah, I'll do that. That sounds
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is when people talk about social media and how bad it is. I tell you what, the events all over the world have never been as good thanks to social media. Because if you were in a time where you didn't have a platform where you could promote an event as well as Facebook does these days, do you think we'd have that many pop-up markets or small little gatherings? Or I think this has really revolutionized events and making cities more fun and making towns more fun, because now people have a platform where they can promote all these initiatives. So I think I think that's an interesting side effect of social media. And also it's just such a great tool these days to take your own initiative but also find the events that you could be interested in.
For sure. And it makes it so much easier. And I hope that throughout this interview, because we're going to have to wrap it up, but you've given so much information. And I feel like for those who are listening, take note that there are different levels of effort that you can put into this, but investing time into your network, into people, just investing time in other people, that is an investment for your career, for your life, that I think is one of the best time that you can spend. It's something where you can't be an island. It's not possible. It's not even, oh, we're so connected in modern day. It was like that before. And I think with recessions coming, uncertainty, the more that you can rely on people, the more that you build up that connection, the more that we like take care of each other, the better off that we're going to be. And give some love to everybody. Buy the world a Coke, whatever you got to do, man. We're all in this together, bro. But Rosanna, you have given so much good information. I truly do appreciate you being on the show. You are definitely one of my favorite people, and
oh, Sami,
it's true. And you
you're
guys,
my favorite people.
thank you. And for all the listeners, if you find yourself in Lisbon during the summer, you see the Lisbon Digital Nomad group, you go to a meetup, look for the woman in the brightly patterned shirt. You're going to be able to find her. She'll be there. Rosanna is not just a known digital marketer and community builder, she's also known for her snazzy shirts. So you'll be able to spot her right away. Say hi.
Yeah, feel free to join if you're ever in Lisbon. Go to meetup.com, Lisbon Digital Nomads, or otherwise look at our Facebook group, Lisbon Digital Nomads. And if you're not a digital nomad but interested in it, there's maybe something going on in your city. So maybe through Meetup or Eventbrite or a Facebook group, you could find a little nomad community of your own as well.
Awesome. Rosanna, so now everybody knows where to go to check out the Lisbon Digital Nomad group. So go there. It's a great community. I always appreciate my time with them. And Rosanna, thank you again.
No, thank you, Sami. I think this is an interesting topic that can help a lot of people. Hopefully people found it interesting or inspiring to do something. And if you're going to step into this with the intention to help and connect others, then it's only going to result in great things for you.
Agreed. So, Rosanna, you're the best. And thank you again. And thank you all for listening. As always, I'm Sami Gardner, and this is the Career Kickstart Show. Bye.
Change your career, change your life at CareerKickstartAcademy.com.